Welcome to another episode of Talk to the Fedora, chatting about hard-hitting, honest entrepreneur wisdom that you can use to grow your small business. I'm your host, Jarrod Goldsmith from eSAX Virtual Events, and today we're very pleased to be welcoming Rick Spence. Rick Spence is a business journalist, consultant, and speaker specializing in entrepreneurship, innovation, and sustainability. Rick is the former editor and publisher of Profit, the magazine for Canadian entrepreneurs. For 15 years, he wrote a regular column on entrepreneurship and innovation for the National Post and Postmedia newspapers across Canada. Rick is currently host of the Startup Canada podcast and senior editor at Corporate Knights, the Magazine of Clean Capitalism. Rick has served on multiple boards and edited Director, the Journal of the Institute of Corporate Directors. He's written a book called Secrets of Success from Canada's fastest growing companies, and he tweets out everything he learns under the handle at Rick Spence. Rick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jarrod. It's great to be here.
Great. Rick, let's start off by knowing where you're calling in from, please.
I'm calling in from the beautiful Toronto waterfront.
Lovely area there.
Spectacular sunny day.
So, Rick, let's talk about a bit about your background. How did you get so involved in the ecosystem of entrepreneurship in Canada?
Well, I started out being a journalist. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I just followed my habit that I liked writing, and I had been the editor of a student newspaper at university, so I became a journalist, a general interest journalist. My first job was in Alberta, so I was from Toronto, but I was a young green cub reporter in Alberta, so I got to it was for a weekly news magazine in Alberta that no longer exists, so I got to cover a whole range of things, and I really liked writing play reviews. But when I returned to Toronto, the only people hiring were business publications, so I got a job with the Financial Times of Canada, which no longer exists. I became a business writer, and we mostly covered big business, and I wrote a lot about economics and did a lot of interviews with CEOs of big publicly traded companies. And I decided most of them were really just puppets who spoke well and dressed even better. And you couldn't talk to a CEO of a big company and get any really good answers about what the company was doing or where it was going, because it was just too big an organization for them to have any control over. And I felt a lot of frustration in that. And then I discovered entrepreneurs who back in those early days were really just beginning to flex their strength and just starting to change the world. And so I was singularly unsuccessful at getting the Financial Times to switch very much of its coverage to entrepreneurs.
Well, why do you think that is? Because the big business sells, it's in the news, billion-dollar companies, that sort of thing?
Well, because at the time there weren't enough investment opportunities, and it was primarily an investor's newspaper.
Right.
And so we overcovered Mitel, if you remember Mitel.
Yeah.
This was before BlackBerry, before so many of the fund companies, and so there wasn't enough investor interest in that. But I switched it out and I joined a magazine called Profit, the magazine for Canadian entrepreneurs. It was actually called Small Business when I joined it, but the first thing we did was change the title, the name of the publication, because there's nothing small about small business. It's the biggest employer in the country. It's responsible for more sales than all the TSX companies combined. And it's the area where there is so much room for creativity and personal development. I fell in love with entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs because I could see that this is how you pursue your dreams. There are some people who are really satisfied to rise up in hierarchies and fit in and get well paid and drive the cool cars. But I was really attracted to the creative people who were trying to do something new and doing it by themselves with whatever resources they could attract to them. And
Rick, hearing the story like this, it's so encouraging, because at the time, like when did you do this? Years ago?
This is the late 80s, a long time ago.
Yeah. And so how has the concept of entrepreneurship changed during that time?
Well,
again,
it's
your small business hat on.
Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurs didn't like the world, so they changed it. So the world we live in now was created by entrepreneurs, whether you're talking about Steve Jobs or at Apple, or Bill Gates of Microsoft, or the Google guys, or Jeff Bezos at Amazon. We live in their world now, and we've learned to live with being responsible for our own careers, and now with our own responsible for our own network, responsible for our own professional development, because the internet creates all those opportunities. The technology we choose says so much about us. So they changed the world, and we changed with it. And it was really exciting. I mean, in the 80s and 90s, it was all small retail, very small manufacturing, doing amazing things. Some of them turned into big companies, but most of them did not. But most of them didn't want to, and that's not how we judge their success.
Right.
But they have changed the world. And the great thing about entrepreneurs is that when they succeed, their impact grows. And this is what I also love. So that you want to see what is their next adventure going to be, because when you start a software company, and even if it's just creating widgets for other people to build upon, and you sell that company, then you have a chance. You now have a platform. You now have a financial platform, an experience platform, and a list of contacts. That means the next challenge you undertake, if you start another business, and most of them do, the next challenge is going to be on another level. And it's going to really change things. And chances are it's going to be even more personal. And this is where you get people suddenly starting companies involved in climate solutions and things, because these are their passions. And the second time around, they get to pursue those passions.
Talking about some of the challenges, Rick, let's jump right into how has COVID changed the field for small business?
Yeah, I think COVID has been good in general for small business, because anything that changes our habits, anything that any new force that affects people means that it brings opportunities and threats. And so the entrepreneurs, by definition, recognize new opportunities, and they jump into it. They do their 10 minutes of market research, and they jump in to try and solve the problem. Most of them fail, but most of them, if they're smart, didn't risk much. So when we say fail, they didn't fail. Their idea did, and they move on and do something else. And in the meantime, the innovative companies, Zoom is a great example. Zoom was nothing until COVID came along, just one platform among many, and it caught the public imagination. It took Microsoft and Google years to catch up to what Zoom was doing as a renegade independent. So now we've seen that the delivery services have gone crazy, creating lots of entrepreneurial opportunities. Some big brand names, but a lot of just individuals finding ways to serve that market. Fashion designers coming up with new ideas for clothes to wear so that you look professional from the waist up. And you can be wearing bunny slippers on your feet. Anything that changes society creates new opportunities, creates new threats. Entrepreneurs mitigate those threats, turn them into opportunities.
Right. Rick, when people are starting up or launching a business, or they've been in business a few years as a side hustle, how important is the concept of collaboration when people are considering a small business?
I love collaboration. I think we're probably kindred spirits on that. The power of one entrepreneur to do something and follow their nose, follow their instincts, and disrupt a system. It's probably the most powerful single force we have in business. But when entrepreneur A finds entrepreneur B and they click, or C and D and E, and when they click, and then you get this network effect of having different points of view, different experiences, different backgrounds, different contact lists, then you get added value. It's a force multiplier, and you can get so much more done. I found probably the most efficient entrepreneurial growth platform is two people working together who like each other at least a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot, but have slightly divergent backgrounds. And when that happens, they can go so much farther than the single entrepreneur who can get discouraged, who can get sidetracked, who can get maneuvered around. Two is better than one. Generally, three is better than two. I'm not sure where the starts to break down.
Rick, I want to point out some of the comments you mentioned. The collaboration is the force multiplier. That's a brilliant piece of knowledge right there.
No, it's just a cliche, really.
Well, I mean, this is important because a lot of the times I would think, and maybe you would agree, small business, they think they have to do everything on their own.
Yeah.
And they might not realize there are people out there who want to help them succeed.
That's exactly right. Obviously, there's lots of different types of collaborations. I was looking at partnerships because I think that's, step one and the most important one. But once you do that, again, never get the idea that it's me against the world. That's okay. I'm tough. I can take it. I can work all night. I can make it happen. That's so wrong. As you're saying, find the people who get excited about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Bring them on board, make them allies. The more allies we can have, the better. And the entrepreneurs who've been the best networkers, and I follow networking very closely. I think it's an incredible power tool for entrepreneurs. They're the ones who are going to succeed. They have people that they can call when they have a question. If they're feeling dispirited, there's people who will help them, get back up on their feet. If they need a resource, they can find it through their networks. So yeah, the lone wolf entrepreneur is a very romantic image, and there's some powerful role models along there. But better than the lone entrepreneur is someone who goes in, who runs with a pack, and can be a loner when they need, and knows how to ask for help, and has a team of people all around them, not necessarily employees. Some of them are going to be customers. The best entrepreneurs make partners with their customers.
Right.
So
interesting. Yeah.
It's just so important. Entrepreneurship is a great job for loners, but it's a much better journey for those who travel together.
Absolutely. Well said. So, Rick, next time I'm lost in Toronto. Rick, I'm lost in the Toronto metro system. Can you help me out?
All right. I told you that. I was supposed to keep a secret that I took the wrong train.
So, Rick, you talked about the concept, the purpose of networking, that the more successful businesses, doesn't matter what stage you're at, tend to get further because they're better networkers. What does that mean to you, please?
It's just a matter of, what are the resources that it takes to start a business? Well, I need money I don't have. I need customers that I don't know.
You don't know yet, yeah.
Yeah. I need to have more feet in the ground, more people talking about what I'm doing. This is all done through people. You can't do it all yourself. If you have maybe a daddy's fortune or something to help you along, then maybe you can skip some of those. But for the most part, it's low cost and low maintenance, and it's all value add. I mean, there's that. I'll throw another cliche out at you, so hopefully you'll think I'm brilliant. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Right.
And that's just what it is. When entrepreneurs find the right partners, then there's no limit to what they can do. What often happens, looking at, I've been at this so long, I've gotten to see entrepreneurs doing their third or fourth projects. Yeah. And what happens is they start off doing something together with one person or a couple people. I've just thought of one where the whole group came together and built a business. They sold it. And 2 years later, when their non-competes expired, that whole group came together and did the exact same business again. That's how strong the network is. But often what I think the general pattern is you start something, your partner becomes your friend, and then over time, 100 different squabbles have come together so that when you have an exit, when you sell the business, you part ways. And very often that entrepreneur that succeeded as half of a leadership team or a third of a leadership team starts a new business by themselves. And sometimes that doesn't work because you underestimate the important contribution of your partners, and you may overestimate just how brilliant you were in achieving all of your goals at the first company. So it's a problem you have to keep facing. Entrepreneurship doesn't really get easier the second time unless you have the contacts and you've learned from your experience the first time.
So, Rick, how do people who are launching a business or have been in business a few years, how do they make those pivotal contacts? Like, well, we talked earlier about the ecosystem. Like, how does one get involved with that?
Well, they have to do what you do, which is get out and meet people. They've got to go to events. They've got to break out of their shell. They've got to talk to people. They've got to have a plan. If you're going to network, there's a huge value in serendipity and just trying very hard to meet as many people as you can and get a chance to know them, talk with them as people for a few minutes before you start talking about what you do.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll find lots of people who can help you in a direction you didn't expect. But it's even better if you go in with a plan and say, okay, this is what I need. I need someone who can introduce me to some really smart capital in the widget space. And I need someone who can give me some introductions in Silicon Valley. And I need some people who can speak the language of my suppliers in Turkey or something. And so you go out and you actually list your catalog, your needs, make a list of it, and go with intention to find out, okay, how can I find people who can do this? Who's done it before? Who do I know who knows someone who can do this?
Yeah.
And so networking, I think it works both ways, as just sort of a general mode of life, never being afraid to walk up to someone and start a conversation, never stopping believing that there will be a benefit in every new person you meet. So I think that works, but what also works, and maybe works a little bit better and a little bit faster, is being intentional about who you need to meet and using your network to find those people sooner.
That's really important, because when I first launched, at least for the band, I would go around to all of the events in the city and try to sell my unique music ensemble, all saxophones, very unique. And I realized after a while that the purpose of that wasn't to give sales pitches. It was developing a rapport that they might know of somebody in the future who might hire me. Not everybody's getting married too often or having a 900-person cocktail reception that they need classical or jazz music for. And that's where I learned the value of the relationship part of the networking.
Yeah. And were you, as you learned that, were you surprised to see how much people wanted to help?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, now if I meet somebody and they go straight into their sales pitch, I don't know about you, but whoa, hi, nice to meet you. What's your name? Shake head.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, when you go to specific networking meetings or even do a conference or everything, there's a lot of people who aren't good at this. And so for those who are more intentional about it, our job is to help those people become a little bit more thoughtful about how they do it. Because no one wants a sales pitch right away. We want to look you in the eyes and find out who you are as a person first.
Yeah. And even virtually, there's nothing wrong with my bunny, slippers on, but the whole idea of wanting to help other people and the small businesses out there, there are resources and people who want to do it, and it's reaching them and it's being friendly in a way that's, it's to further that relationship. And I think you'll agree that small businesses will further go along in the future if they treat it like that.
Yeah.
Not trying to use people, but trying to, like we talked about, collaboration.
Right. In networking, it's, find a way to help the other person first.
Yeah.
And then maybe they'll be willing to help you. And so you give first. That's all it is. You're looking for something, you need something. Who do I know who can help you? I'm glad to share those resources. If you contact my contact, then my contact knows I'm thinking about them and, perhaps hooking them up with interesting things. So every contact, even if it's a secondary contact, strengthens the network. Networking is this wonderful, sort of vaguely almost scientific process by which you you keep giving and you get back more, and yet all that work, both ways, giving and getting, strengthens you.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my favorite tips is I ask a lot of questions. And when someone says, what do you do? I tweak it every time I meet somebody. Most of the time I say, I connect people. Well, what do you mean you connect people? Oh, yeah. What type of research are you looking for? X, Y, Z. I'll send you some good contacts for that. And I think, wow, that's amazing. What do you do? And then it just develops from there.
Right. And look how much energy you've already created by having that fun, slightly playful answer that gets people involved, that draws people in. It's very smart. The most powerful thing I learned as I studied networking was the silliest thing possible. I'm an introvert, as generally half of Canadians are, and I used to find it very difficult to start a conversation with somebody. Mm-hmm. And I think, what do I have to give? I don't know who this person is. Look at their shoes. I'd overthink everything. What's a clever line I could say that will show them how smart I am? All these things would go around in my head, and by that time, those people would have moved off to talk to somebody else. And then I learned, after quite a bit of of stopping and starting, that the best thing to do, whether you're sitting in a waiting room at the airport, whether you're at a function where you know a lot of people, or whether you're a complete stranger at a networking event, go up to someone and just say, "Hi, I'm Rick." Now, this doesn't work for everybody, but you just say, "Hi, I'm Jarrod," or Mary Sue, or whatever. And the other person will almost always respond saying, "Hi, this is my name." And right away, you've established a first name relationship. And good things happen when you do this. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to be brilliant. You don't have to figure out how to engage them. Just go up and start talking.
Oh, that's the first step, is walking out the door and going to an event.
Yeah. And often we go to these events anyway, so let's make the most of them.
Yeah.
And I discovered this at a conference. I had the good fortune, the Financial Post, when I was doing some work for them, they allowed me to cover a conference in Oxford, the Skoll Conference for Social Entrepreneurs, which was an annual conference, still goes on, in Oxford, England, to really bring together the mission-oriented social entrepreneurs from all over the world. And I just forced myself out of my shell to meet as many people as I could. And I actually came up with the tagline, "Every new person is an adventure."
Oh, that's a good one.
Everyone has something to teach you. Everyone has experiences you've never had, and answers to questions that have always bugged you.
Right.
They have information and resources and contacts, and there's no such thing as walking up to the wrong person.
Yeah. For those who are listening and watching, the if you consider yourself an introvert, like we talked about, showing up at the event, going up to one person saying, "Hi, my name is so and so. This is the first time I'm at this event. I don't know anybody. I'm a little intimidated." You'll find people who've been around the networking scene for a while. They'll take you under their wing. They say, "Oh, you're doing great. What type of people are you looking to connect with?" Maybe there's ambassadors at that event whose job is it to make people feel more comfortable. And they'll take you around and introduce you to 10 other people.
And you know what? Right now is a great time to do that, because we're all so unaccustomed to events now.
Yeah.
And we're all just getting back into it. So everyone's raw, everyone's starting over. And this is a great time to practice this and to learn how to do it, because the people who, are back on their feet first and best at this will have the best experiences and meet the best people.
Right. So let's talk about the concept of branding, Rick. Let's say somebody's starting up a business. They've been in business again a couple of years. They may or may not know much about branding. What does branding mean to you, and how do people start creating a brand?
Yeah. Branding to me is creating a message that makes you stand out and indicates something Doesn't tell the whole story. People try and fit too much into the brand, but tells people something about what you do, what your business does, and why. So it's a way so that and you have your Fedora. That's a brand. Obviously, eSAX is your brand, and that's great. When I met you, I already knew who you were.
I don't know if you ever got one of our Fedora business cards.
I do, yes.
Yeah, very, very cute. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Canadians are generally not very good at it. Branding to me is also very similar to the concept of having a mission statement. And it's hard to say what your brand should be, but because a brand can be playful or serious depending on the individual or the culture of the organization and what it's trying to do and who it's trying to communicate with. So developing a brand is hard, but I like to say, try and make it come out of a personal mission statement.
It has to be authentic as well. Like if you don't buy into it, then
right. So my formula for coming up with a mission statement is really simple. It's I do this for these people, who your market is, who your customers are, so they can do this. So I write articles so that more entrepreneurs can become better entrepreneurs, or something. That would be a literal translation of my mission statement as a business writer. Right. But we make software so that companies can communicate better with their customers. We provide services so that construction companies can clean up their sites quicker. It's the simplest way. This formula starts with I or we, which is a chancy thing, but if you do it right, it can work. And then the next two questions are about the customers. Who are they and what do they want or need? Mm-hmm. So I do this for them so that they can succeed. How? So you find a way to put those three concepts together in a sentence. And then from there, your brand can actually emerge. As you say, oh, but we do it with style and grace. Okay, that's going to be part of our brand. Or we do it with service. Okay, that's the brand. Or we have better technology than anyone else. That's the brand. And the great thing is that entrepreneurs who lead teams, you can get everybody involved in developing the brand. You get everyone together for a beer after work one day, or some wine. And talk about who are our customers, what do we want, how do we excite people with our brand. And I think it's something you should always do. There's no such thing as having the best brand and then stopping. You've got to always be looking and say, okay, how can we tweak this? How can we make it better? What's different in the marketplace? What are there new types of customers we want to get? How do we attract their attention with a brand or a mission statement or whatever?
So, Rick, when people are, it depends. Yeah. When somebody's starting up a business, they might not know what their brand or their mission statement is at first. Would you encourage them to finesse it before they go out into the world and start promoting it, or
yes, never ever start. Never talk to a customer until you've got it all figured out on 9 sheets of paper. No, I'm being facetious, obviously. No, the customers are going to help build the brand for you so you've got to get out there and talk to them about what you do. That act of talking about it helps you get better at it. Plus, it gives, and this is that power of collaboration we talked about before. Even if it's unwitting collaboration, even if it's just a conversation, the client will give you the customer or the prospect. They will not only give you feedback, but they'll give you the words that you need because they know their pain points, they know their wants and needs better than you do. And when you use the best of their language, then chances are you're going to appeal to a lot more potential prospects in your space by using their language and making it clear that you're listening and that you're really trying to serve. You're not just doing it your way.
Right. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, you're not just trying to make $1 million and exit. It's helping other people. That's why we're entrepreneurs and in one of the first places. Yeah.
So as a kid, and my father was a banker, and all his friends were in business, and business repelled me. It was all about money and finance, and school taught me it was about balance sheets and debt and things I barely understood. And I think that's all wrong. Business is about people. Business is about helping other people and accepting help from them. And the rest of it is all tools. And so and this is what makes entrepreneurship such a great starter point for young people, the people who start businesses while they're still in high school.
A lot of people get their start that way.
Yeah. And you get that familiarity with people. You build that confidence, because you see, everybody needs something. They all want help from somewhere, whether it's you or your product or someone else that you know. And you can all click over these conversations. So it's all about people. The entrepreneurs, there's space for entrepreneurs who hate people and just want to write code in their basement, and that's fine too. Entrepreneurship there's a form of entrepreneurship that fits almost every personality type.
Right.
But to me, it's a path that will lead you in places you don't expect, and give you experiences you can never have, and reward you. The average entrepreneur doesn't earn as much money as the average business executive. And, I think it's important that we acknowledge things like this. If you make it big, if you have an exit for your company, you can make a lot of money. But that's not the experience for most entrepreneurs. But the lifestyle is what makes it, to me, a very desired destination.
Yeah, I mean, we had the chance to interview another entrepreneur author named David Sachs. And he spoke a lot about the lifestyle, the mind frame of entrepreneurship, and like what you're saying too. It's brilliant stuff. And Rick, how do you talk about money, cash flow? A lot of businesses might not need a lot of money to start. The entry could be very low, but if you're developing a health issue, or rather a product or something that NASA might use, you might need a few million. How does one approach cash flow?
Excuse me. Yeah. As your company grows, as your business grows, then you're going to need a lot more financial help. And obviously, the first thing you need is a part-time bookkeeper. And they can tell you what you need and when you're in trouble. You don't have to follow that stuff. You just have to make sure you're giving them all the information in the time frame that they need it. Beyond that, as you go along, you will meet accountants, and you can find the people you need to help you keep on track. You just keep them away from the creative parts of the business because they have one job, and they'll do it well. They'll tell you when you're in trouble or when you're not. If you can find a creative accountant that can also talk strategy and customers, then that's beautiful, but don't count on it. They are out there, but they might be working at a higher plane than you can afford. I mean, you have to understand the role of debt in business and how it's not a fearsome state. It's a tool to build your business if you use it right. But a lot of that will come as if you're taking an interest in that at the same time as you're focusing on building the business. And when you get to a certain point, yes, you'll need that bookkeeper full time, and then you'll need that accountant full time,
right?
And that'll be great. But it shouldn't stop you from getting into business as long as it turns out most of the rules of accounting, as technical as they can get, are based on common sense. And as long as you have more money in the bank at the end of the month than you had at the first of the month, then you can keep focusing on the non-financial metrics that really matter.
Right. Rick, you've had the chance to interview and chat with a lot of big business. And then when you went on to your own writing about the small business side, what about the concept of processes? Would you say that there are some similar processes across the board that every entrepreneur should use, or is it different for small business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Obviously, the answer is yes. Whatever works for you is the best way. And a lot of entrepreneurs are not process people. So they start out coming out of your individual situation. What parts of the business are you most interested in? What bores the hell out of you? What do you need to know? And what don't you need to have your fingers on top of? And then you build your team around that, so that maybe that bookkeeper has more hours or less hours, fewer hours, depending on who you are and what skills you bring to the table. So it's not one size fits all, but I think the most important thing is discipline. Listen to what the experts are telling you. Take calculated risks. Do the numbers 3 times before you take any chances. And make sure that the team around you is one that can capitalize on opportunities and yet, keep their heads down and do things right in whatever culture you've established. And generally that's going to be, be parsimonious about the money, spend other people's money before your own, leverage relationships so that you get as much free advice and free resources as you can. And always be talking, when you're always talking to everyone, you're going to end up meeting a lot of financial people, and you'll be able to have a sounding board for how do I do this or that. The whole trajectory of small business is starting with no rules at all, no process, and developing more and more process as you go along. And everyone will tell you, you need to do this, 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 and this, and it's all got to be written down, and it's all got to be done by the 3rd of every month or whatever. And as an entrepreneur, you get your choice as to whether that's necessary or not. As many companies fall apart because of over process as lack of process. So you don't want to kill the culture.
Yeah, I don't want to get bogged down in the details like that.
Yeah. And too much process is going to curtail and discourage some of your best, most creative people. So you got to be very careful about not operating willy-nilly, but also not surrounding everyone with red tape. Don't make them all fill out the cab slip forms.
Yeah.
If you can find any way to save them from that burden. But yeah, if you're not disciplined, if you're not the type to be able to watch the accounts, then you better surround yourself with really good people, because obviously that minimum amount of process is absolutely essential.
Yeah, it reminds me of the movie Office Space. Yeah, I like those TPS reports. Rick, let's talk about some time management. We know that some people go into small business because they think to themselves, I want to have my 5-day work weeks. I want to, or rather, vacation days. I only want to work 2 days a week. How do you approach time management as an entrepreneur?
I think most entrepreneurs are on, 7/24. It's very important that they watch their time, but you're always on the alert. You're meeting people at parties at 11 a.m. on Saturday night and talking shop with people. So, but entrepreneurship is a way of life. It's not a job. So there are no business hours. It's you learning and meeting people and discovering new resources 24 hours a day, every single day, even on vacation. Relax if you can. Entrepreneurs are really good at stealing a few extra hours here and there for themselves. And that's great. That lifestyle allows it so that you don't have to be stuck in traffic at 5:30 every day or 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon when you're trying to get to a friend's cottage up north. Time management is mostly about guarding your time and find ways to make sure that you're doing the highest value work. Every time you feel that you're bogged down doing something that's not creating value for the company, something that's making you feel small and mean, then that means it's time to hire someone or to delegate that work to somebody so that you can be freed up to do the things you do best, whether that's product, whether that's customers, whether that's leadership. So the most important thing in time management is make sure you're always doing the highest value work that you can possibly do. And, the same for everybody on your team.
Yeah, I mean, you really hit the nail on the head. It's a lifestyle, and people might not realize it. I mean, family obligations, commitments, what comes first? That's a tough decision to make. Uh, like, because we're always on, like you say, you're at an event on a Saturday night. Do you have business cards with you? Maybe, hopefully, but always on. I remember chatting with somebody years ago, and they're like, "Oh, I worked 65 hours in the government this week." I said this, and we've heard it before. I remember what it was like to have a part-time job. And they looked at me like, "What am I, crazy?" Like, you're always on. Absolutely, yeah.
Part-time job, exactly.
So, Rick, no doubt you've had a lot of great experiences interviewing people, writing in the ecosystem. Do you have any successes that you're most proud of that you care to share?
Sure. I discovered Kevin O'Leary. How's that? We made him what he is today. The successes are that I look back on was where we had early contact, whether it was a Profit magazine or National Post or just personally, where I had early contact with entrepreneurs and maybe had some tiny little bit to give them that helped them achieve their goals. So I take, tremendous pride that we've helped. Profit Magazine had a project for many years. Profit Magazine does not exist. It folded about 10 years ago when the advertising market all shifted to Facebook overnight.
Yeah.
Like so many print publications. There's really very little entrepreneurship press in Canada now, which is a shame and a problem I'm trying to work on but haven't cracked yet. But to be able to help nudge entrepreneurs along the way has been very important, and to help them tell their story. The project that we did, we were most proud of at Profit Magazine was the Profit 100 list of Canada's fastest growing companies. Yes, it was a direct steal off of Inc. Magazine's list of the Inc. 500, but it was the first time it had been done in Canada, and we proved it could be done. We did collaborations, special collaborations across the country through all the major banks. We did collaborations in Quebec through a Quebec French language business magazine so that we could fill in for the areas we weren't strong in. And we built the first list of Canada's most incredible new small businesses based on our criterion of 5-year revenue growth. And then as startups became more important, we did a junior version of the Profit 100, which was the Growth 100, of companies that had only been around for 3 years, but were already reaching great growth.
But that adds so much inspiration for other.
Well, that's exactly right. You get to see what's going on. You're giving. We were surprised to find that a lot of entrepreneurs were including in their official list of objectives that they wanted to be on the Profit 100. They wanted to be on the Growth 100. That they wanted that level of affirmation in the marketplace, and we were able to give it to them, and obviously make it aspirational for so many people. And the issues of the magazine where those came out was basically a guide to how you get your company on those lists, because we're always asking these entrepreneurs for their best practices, their best growth tips.
Right.
And the Canadian market doesn't really have that now. The Profit 100, which became the Profit 500, survives through a list that Maclean's magazine does. Their heart isn't in it, so they don't have as much. They don't put as much fuss into it. It's not as aspirational as it used to be, but at least it's still out there. And
well, when you get it off the ground again, Rick, let me know what I could do to help.
Right.
So, Rick, let's talk about the other side as well. Some challenges that you find can be applied to entrepreneurs or small business.
Sorry, what?
Some challenges that small businesses face.
Yeah.
Or lessons learned, rather.
Lessons learned is good, yeah. I mean, the biggest challenge is getting beyond their comfort zone. They all have a certain market that they're comfortable with, and it might be the size of a kitchen sink or it might be the size of a bathtub. And getting them to think bigger and see, okay, there's a whole ocean out there let's hit that. That's the biggest problem, and probably the biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge is to get companies to constantly, and entrepreneurs to constantly renew themselves, to make sure that they're having those sessions where they sit down and say, okay, what are we doing? Why are we doing this?
How
How
often
could
would
we
you
do this
suggest people
better?
do that?
Sorry?
How often? Once every quarter, once a year, once a month?
And the thing is, I'm talking about is a strategic level. So probably once a year. What can we do better? What else should we be doing? What do our customers want us to do more of? What do our customers want us to do less of? And then also going back to your very first question about branding, how do we refresh this brand? How do we let people know that this is not the same company it was 2 years ago? Our mission has shifted. Our products are so much better. How do we create new excitement? One of the real problems is that a business can become just a functioning machine where everybody knows their role and everyone just pounds in their particular rivet wherever wherever their job requires them to. And they stop thinking about this as a living organism that has to constantly refresh, that has to do new things, that has to re-excite their customers. And when I talk to people about what they're doing, and they can be award-winning entrepreneurs, very successful entrepreneurs, but they're not often asking these questions. So they're not going to get their business to that next level that they're talking about, because it's just operating at such a conventional level of thinking. And we've got to constantly keep pushing ourselves to be more creative, to be more fun, to be more daring.
Yeah, and those can be very uncomfortable conversations, but comfort is not in our lifeblood when as an entrepreneur, so it's something to get into. Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. I mean, if you look at big businesses, they actually thrive on routine. They thrive on comfort. And I think that, the marketplace is very busy, very active. It's churning all the time. So yeah, comfort should not be the goal. Just continual growth, continual self-reflection, and continual imagination should be the goal for entrepreneurs.
Really, really wise. Rick, where do you want to be? What's next for you? Let's say in a couple of years from now.
I'm trying to figure out how we can bring back more and more professional coverage of small business in Ontario or in Canada. And it has to be, there are no national platforms for that anymore, which is why it has to start regionally, whether it's in Quebec or Alberta or BC or Ontario or Atlantic Canada, because we don't have Profit Magazine anymore. We don't have Canadian Business Magazine anymore. The national newspapers, the National Post dropped my column after a while because small business, as the paper shrunk and shrunk, small business took up less and less space in it because, all those earnings reports, quarterly earnings reports just take up all the space there is. So we've lost a lot of that creative content, that real interest in discovering new entrepreneurs and telling their stories and tracing how business and society are changing through the changing agendas of entrepreneurs. We've lost all that stuff, and I'm trying to figure out how we can give it back. Podcasts are fun, but that's not the only answer.
Right. Well, Rick, we're reaching the end of our segment today. Do you have any closing words of wisdom for the small businesses listening in today?
Yeah, I'm very proud of this one. Actually, can I do two?
Please, go ahead.
Okay. The greatest words of wisdom I've ever heard came from a guy in Vancouver who was actually a TELUS executive who became an entrepreneur. Roy Osing wrote a book called Be Different or Be Dead. And he came up with a wonderful solution to the branding question that we were discussing at several points today. He said, what is your only statement? And if you're struggling to figure out what your business is about, then he suggests, and if you're struggling to create a value proposition for the customer, then he says, look for your only statement. My company is the only one that does this. My company is the only one in Ottawa that combines networking and entrepreneurship and saxophones. How compelling is that? And the word only gets you there. I'm the only guy who's been consistently in covering small business across Canada for 30 years. I have to turn that into a value proposition. But the only statement really helps clarify who you are and what you need to do next.
I like that, yeah.
And one more is, I was once asked on a panel where we were entrepreneurs, and we were all asked, what would be our best 3 words of advice? And so the pressure's on, right? And so I came up with something with which I really like and which I have to remind myself of all the time. So when you're not sure what to do, 3 words: make the call. Everyone needs to be reaching out for something. Maybe it's for a sale, maybe it's to ask for help, maybe it's to hire somebody. And we all have reasons for putting that off and trying to overthink it. And the entrepreneurial solution is just make the call.
Just do it. Make the call. Yeah.
Get it done. And then after that's done, whether it's for better or for ill, you can move on to the next thing.
But that's also pushing the needle forward too. Like, it doesn't matter what it.
Either way, you win.
Yeah.
Make the damn call. That's 4 words.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's some great wisdom. Thank you, Rick. Rick, how can somebody get in touch with you, please?
I'm on Twitter at Rick Spence for as long as Twitter remains a civil society, and Rick at rickspence.ca.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So, Rick, today we're very pleased to be welcoming you and joining us and sharing some entrepreneur wisdom on Talk to the Fedora. We hope that this segment has provided some wisdom for you to grow your small business. So please subscribe to our eSAX YouTube channel and be sure to check out the hundreds of other videos we have on entrepreneurial content. Rick, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Jarrod. You did a great job.
Thank you.